Good day and welcome back to the Whiteboard series. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is close to everyone's heart. Something that everyone has been asking me and I've been taking some time to think about it. So finally today I'm going to talk about what are some tips on revision and how should you be attempting your exam questions. So before I start, I just want to add in a disclaimer that whatever that I'm about to say isn't exhaustive. That means this isn't the only way that you can score well in your exams. It also doesn't mean that just by following these tips, it will guarantee you a very good grade. However, by following these tips, it will help you to make your studying more efficient and more productive. It will also allow you to attempt your questions during exams in a more systematic way. So without any further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing to do, how should you go about revising, right? So I want to talk a little bit about, firstly, let's talk about how you can go about structuring your revision. Okay, so structure Now, for me, the first step that I like to do, doesn't mean that you have to do it, is to always, number one, look through the notes. Alright, now why do you want to do that? So I would look through my notes, go to my textbook, watch whatever online tutorials that you have to at least gain some basic concept or idea on what the topic is about, as well as what are the key ideas / concepts. So what am I talking about? So for example, when you talk about heat, under heat, there are many key concepts. For example, heat transfer. All right, and the key idea of heat transfer would be that heat always travels from a region of higher temperature to a region of lower temperature. That is just one concept under the topic of heat. And then there's another key concept, for example, good and poor conductors of heat. And then the key idea behind this concept of conductors of heat would be that a good conductor will allow heat to travel through, pass through it very quickly. So you see, with every key concept, there is always key ideas behind it. And that's where you need to be very clear. So how do you do that? You look through your notes. So while you're studying, find out what are these key concepts and then make it a point to either highlight or even better still, take a piece of paper, write it out on your own, summarize it in your own matter. So if you have watched my videos, you will realize that they are very concise. All right, I tend to be able to use simplified words or simplified sentences to summarize what's the most key important things. This helps me to focus only on the important key concepts while removing all the other frivolous examples and everything else. Because sometimes when you're studying, for an exam, you really want to just focus on the key ideas. Now, once you have gotten a good idea of what the topic is about, the next thing that you need to do is to look at the topical practice papers or questions pertaining to that topic that you are trying to study for. Now, your topical practice papers, any 10-year series or any assessment books, you will realize that they always test on the same key concepts. For example, in heat, they always like to test on heat transfer. They always like to test on expansion and contraction of items. They always like to test on conductors of heat. So these are the common key concepts that they like to test on. So what you need to know is when you are looking through your topical practice paper, look out for these common questions. or rather common concepts tested. Alright? So why do you want to do that? That's because, in all honesty, the paper is only a mere 1 hour to 1.5 hours, depending whether are you sitting for your a very short assessment or you're sitting for the year-end assessment. However, do take note that, in all honesty, the amount of time in an exam is very short only. Thus, your examiner will only test you on the most common, or should I say, key concepts that is most important to you as a learner. So they'll never try and test you something that is out of syllabus or something that is so new until you spend so much time trying to figure out what it is. So by understanding and looking out for these common concepts that are tested, you are familiar. Alright? So why you want to do that? You want to have the experience to answer these questions. It's really not about just drilling and practicing and memorizing for the sake of memorizing. No. It's to give you that confidence and the experience to tackle such questions. So for example, for heat, you know that they always test you about heat. So make sure you understand that the common idea behind heat, let's say it's an expansion concept question, that you must mention in your answer that for an object to expand, it will gain heat, causing it to expand and then increase in volume. So the fact that it needs to gain heat, it needs to expand, and it needs to increase in volume, these are the key ideas related to expansion. And you have to include that into your answer. So by looking out for these common concepts that's being tested, you sort of help yourself narrow down and focus. I'm not saying that you should just look at these common concepts tested. I'm telling you that at the very least, you should have these things very well drilled into you, because this is your foundation. Alright, and then you can go on to look at more novel questions, more difficult and challenging questions once you got these common concepts settled. Alright? So now that you have looked through your notes, you've gone through your topical practice, what next? The third step, which is actually very important, is to actually identify what are your area for improvement. So what do I mean by that? So as you're studying, there'll be things that you always tend to forget, or things that you're really not quite sure, or things that you probably would be very confused with. For example, let's just say you're having a very difficult time trying to remember, the how the different positions of your torch, object, and screen will affect the height of your shadow, because that can be really quite confusing. So does the decrease in distance between the object and the torch cause the shadow become bigger or smaller? I can't really remember. So write it down somewhere, alright, and then go back to revise it the day before your exam, or put it in somewhere that you can have easy access to. So this will help you really build a bank of ideas that you need to focus on. So when it comes to the last part of revision, you don't feel so lost as in, what do I study? I've studied everything already. Well, look through those that you've really identified as a point of weakness. So that will really help to close any gaps that you might have, and make sure that you're covered in all areas, helping you increase in your confidence. Alright? So with that, we've pretty much covered how you should structure your revision. Alright? Now, the next part of my video, I want to talk about some strategies that you can use during your exams to help you make the best or make the most out of your time. So, exam tips. Now, number 1. Okay, this is what I feel that works for me. May not work for you, but I think it's a relatively good thing to just very quickly flip through the paper, okay, especially for section B, to see what kind of questions came out. This is to give you a rough idea of how you can plan about attempting the questions. Now, I'm just going to jump into the MCQ part first. Okay, let's just say we're doing the first part of your paper, which is booklet A or section A. Now, for MCQ, very importantly, you must try to aim for 100% correct. Now, why am I stressing this to you? Think about it. Every single MCQ question is worth 2 marks, and all you need to do is to write a number for it. So, if you can see the significance of this, you will realize that you really need to put in the effort and be very careful in answering your MCQ. So the reason why I'm even talking about this is a lot of times students don't pay enough attention to the MCQs. You know, just by losing that mere few questions, you have lost, just 2 questions will make you lose 4 marks just like that. Whereas in booklet B, you will need to write about 3 sentences to earn that 2 marks. But in section A, you don't need to do that. So you really need to tell yourself to focus and pay attention to booklet A. The next thing is, when you're doing your MCQ questions, you need to use the elimination method. Now, what is the elimination method? Okay, I'm going to explain to you briefly. Now, in the exam, you have 4 options. Option 1, option 2, option 3, and option 4. Now, you need to run through every single option and justify why that option is not correct. So, for example, I run through option 1 and I justify in my mind why is it not correct. For example, which of the following statement about expansion of heat is not correct? So maybe option 1 says that, in the expansion of an object, it loses heat. So that's wrong, right? I will cross it out. All right. So I would in my mind think that, oh no, in an expansion, I should be gaining heat and not losing heat. So therefore, option 1 is wrong, because option 1 said that during expansion, the object would lose heat, which is not correct. So based on that, I crossed it out. So I eliminated that. And then I do the same thing until I hit something that is correct. For example, they say during expansion, the object gains heat. So option 3 is correct. I can put a tick next to it. However, I need to still go on to read question 4 and make sure that it is a wrong answer. Now, the reason why is, do you realize that in MCQ booklets, they always say that select the best possible answer? So the key thing here is best possible answer. So you need to understand that sometimes the options can sound very similar. You may think that option 3 is correct, but guess what? Option 4 could be a better option. So you really need to go through all the 4 options. Don't pick the first one that you think is correct. All right. Next. Now, when attempting questions, please bear in mind for MCQ that don't be afraid. And then always ask yourself, okay, use the elimination method, because once let's say you're stuck at a question, you use the elimination question, at the very least, you should be able to eliminate 2 options very obviously, leaving yourself with a 50% chance. Let's just say you've got 2 options, you're not too sure. All right. Well, at least it's a 50% chance. Do not leave it blank. Okay, this is very important. Some students actually leave their MCQ questions blank because they don't know what's the answer. Use the elimination method. Eliminate what you can. and then pick the best out of the remaining correct options that you think is the best one. Now, it is also very important to understand that MCQ questions sometimes may not be 100% accurate in terms of their phrasing sometimes. So just pick the most correct one and you'll be fine. So that's more or less for MCQ questions. I'm going to move on to structure. Sorry, one more other thing. Before I forget. Now, when attempting questions, be it MCQ or open-ended question, the most important thing you need to identify first is the topic. Because by identifying the topic, you will be able to narrow down your thoughts. And then within that topic, please, find out what concept are they testing you. For example, you have heat as a topic, but under heat, there's so many topics. Are they testing you on concepts on good conductors of heat? Are they testing you on expansion, contraction? Are they testing you on transfer of heat? So by narrowing down, let's just say the question is testing you on expansion and contraction, straight away you would actually be able to narrow down on what are the key ideas. So for contraction, you know that for contraction I must talk about losing heat and then becoming smaller, and if it's expansion, I must talk about gaining heat and then increasing in volume. Alright? So that will help you identify what are the keywords and key ideas to put in your answers. Alright, so we've come to section B. Open-ended question. We call it OEQ, open-ended questions. Now for open-ended questions, booklet B, I would like to flip through it once to take a look at what are the questions I have to attempt. Now, generally speaking, if I find a question that's too difficult, I wouldn't do it first. Some students prefer to do those questions that are more difficult because they feel that they've really attempted the most difficult questions, and then the rest is a breeze. They feel more relaxed. Now, actually, I would prefer that one actually attempts the easier questions first. In fact, that is how your paper is structured. It's structured to help you gain confidence. So don't destroy your self-confidence by attempting the most difficult questions. Alright, so always attempt the easiest question. The easier questions first. Because with easier question, you know that you can actually secure the marks. And in exam, it's about strategy sometimes. You rather spend 10 minutes securing something that you know you can do than rather spending 10 minutes attempting a question that you might not be able to get marks for. So a lot of students tend to do it the other way around. I'm going to try the most difficult question and then I come back to the, attempting the easy one. No. Do the easy question ones first. Secure whatever marks you can secure. And then after that, go and do those difficult questions. Because sometimes the difficult questions there are put there to differentiate between the A and the A-star students. But it will be a shame, to lose your marks just because you are so focused on doing such difficult questions. And in the end, you're left with so little time in doing the easier questions. And then you become careless. And that's where you lose marks unnecessarily. Alright? So, first things first, remember, identify topic they're testing, concept. Now, then after that, the next thing you do is to apply. Apply whatever answering strategies that you have, so strategies that I've talked about include CER or your CEO for electricity, and other ones like, for example, HDO for heat. So these are some strategies that you will need to actually study and remember them while you're doing your topical practice questions, and then you apply these strategies in the answering of your question. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the common mistake that people tend to make when they're answering open-ended questions. Now, for data questions, right, students tend to, when they phrase their answers, let's just say you're given a comparison between 3 items, A, B, C, material A, B, C, and then after that, the question asks you, okay, so which one would you use to make into a cooking pan, a frying pan? And then students would say that, oh, I'm going to pick material A because it's a good conductor of heat. Now, you need to be very careful. You cannot use good conductor of heat because it's a comparison between 3 items, 1, 2, and 3. So, you need to say that it is a better conductor of heat as compared to B and C. You see the difference? Alright? So, being a good conductor, why you cannot just put good conductor is because B and C could very well be very good conductors as well. Right? But why do you put A? Because it's the best among the 3. So therefore, these are little things that you have to be careful of. And whenever you use CER, your evidence. Now the evidence part, you need to quote values. So for example, let's just say you say that, oh, the data logger detected the highest highest amount of light passing through object Y. So a lot of students say, oh, okay, and full stop there. But what does it mean if, let's just say, the data logger has detected the highest amount of light passing through material Y? So you have to go on and say, this suggests, I love this phrase, this suggests, okay, that material Y is transparent. Okay, and if let's just say the light detector the light sensor did not detect any light passing through material Z, this suggests that material Z is opaque, does not allow any light to pass through, and therefore it doesn't your light sensor does not detect any light. So these are the little things that you need to be careful of when you're answering open-ended. Alright? Now, the last and final tip that I have for you, not really last, actually I still have one more last, but before the last, look at the marks allocated. Okay, sometimes they don't tell you to explain your answer. Okay, for example, they will ask, which material would you choose to make a pen, a frying pan? 2 marks. So because it's 2 marks and they just ask you which material would you use, you have to justify your answer. Don't just say material A or material B. That alone will not justify your answer. In fact, many of times when students just tell the examiner which material to use, okay, without justifying why, there's no marks. In fact, even if you do tell me which material to use without justification, it's 0 marks, because it could very well that you've guessed it right, because there's only 3 options. Let's just say there are 3 materials, A, B, C, and A happened to be answered and you just so happen to write A there. So in exams, right, just by telling me material A will not earn you any marks at all. So make sure you take a look at the marks allocation to justify how much you need to write. Now, I know that many students have this tendency to write very short answer or answers that they just pull out from their own understanding. That cannot be the case. You will not get your marks because you're not using the keywords that I need you to use, or you're not stringing the concepts together in the right scientific manner. So go and look through your practice paper. I repeat, go and look through your practice paper, see how the common concept questions are being tested and what is the answer. Look at the structure of the answer given, the correct answer. Because these model answers will give you an idea of what are the expectations, how do you structure your answer. So you can use strategies that I've taught you to answer these questions, of course, but really looking at it will give you experience, will give you a feel of what the examiner is trying to elicit out of you, all right, and you'll be able to better predict the correct answer. So my very final tip to you is, I'm going to use a very nice blue color. Make sure you check your paper. So how do you check your paper? Make sure you shade your MCQ correctly, because you would be using OAS. There are so many times whereby students, right, they just miss one question and then they end up shading the wrong one, and every other questions that is after that wrongly shaded question becomes a wrong answer because it all got shifted up by one or shifted down by one question. So make sure you check. Okay, so one way to do it is to write your answer on the question booklet and then tally against your OAS sheet. OAS sheet, just in case you don't remember, is the one that you shade your answers on. That's one. Two, for booklet B, make sure that you answer everything. Don't leave blanks. That's one. Two, read your answers one more time. Okay, read your answers when you have time. Why? Because sometimes it can be very complicating. Maybe we meant to say gain heat, it becomes lost heat. Or the way we phrase it is just wrong, or it doesn't make sense. You're sometimes just missing one word can change the whole thing. For example, does not gain heat, you miss out the not, become does gain heat. And the idea is just totally wrong. Also, spelling. Generally, please make sure that your spelling is correct, because if you've misspelled a word and the word actually has another meaning in English, then it's too bad for you. Alright? So for example, cell, C-E-L-L, like animal cells, you spell it as S-E-L-L. So S-E-L-L actually means to sell something to somebody else, right? So it has a different meaning. Though I know that you mean animal cell, but because you spell it S-E-L-L, which has another meaning in English, I cannot give you the marks. Alright? So these are my tips for revision and attempting your exam questions. Please do not just rely on this alone. These are just tips that's meant to guide you on your revision and help you be more focused and structured. So with that, I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you